$6 billion, gone without a trace. And the trigger? A spreadsheet no one ever questioned. London, 2012. JPMorgan's most aggressive trading desk was rewriting the rules of the market. Billions were flowing through trades so big they worked prices. At the center of it all, a trader nicknamed the London Whale, a legend in the making. But legends have weak spots, and this one was hidden in an Excel file. Somewhere in that file, a single cell held the fate of billions. A formula copied wrong, a line of math that erased the bank's true risk from the reports. Executives saw numbers that looked perfect. Traders believed they were untouchable. No alarms, no questions. The spreadsheet was lying, and everyone trusted the lie. As the bets swelled, whispers started spreading through hedge funds across the Atlantic. Some saw an opening. Some were already positioning to profit when the inevitable collapse came. But inside JPMorgan, the silence held. And when the truth finally leaked, it was already too late. The loss wasn't millions, it was billions. A scandal that would shake Wall Street to its core. But here's the question no one dared to ask out loud. Was it just a mistake? Or was someone counting on that formula to fail? The trading floor in London was nothing like the movies. No shouting, no chaos. Just the low hum of servers and the glow of screens, painting faces in blue light. Numbers streamed across monitors like rivers of code, silent, hypnotic, endless. To the untrained eye, it was calm, but to those inside, it was a battlefield without sound. Here, inside JPMorgan's chief investment office, the stakes were measured in billions. This was the nerve center for trades designed to protect the bank, to hedge risks that could threaten its empire. It wasn't supposed to be about winning big. It was supposed to be about not losing. But one man quietly shifted that balance. Bruno Ixil. They called him the London Whale. Not because of his size, but because his trades were so enormous, so heavy, that markets rippled when he moved. Hedge funds across the Atlantic felt his presence like a shadow passing beneath the water. At first, no one questioned the strategy. Positions expanded, profits rolled in. The bank's risk reports glowed green. Executives smiled. The spreadsheet said everything was safe, as if the system itself was blessing every move. But safety is an illusion. Behind the perfect numbers, something was already rotting. The trades were no longer hedges, they were bets. And the spreadsheet tracking their risk? It was broken. A quiet flaw hidden deep in the formulas, invisible to everyone who trusted it blindly. Was it ignorance or willful blindness? Because when profits look flawless, when every chart sings the same sweet song, who dares ask the question that could ruin the party? As the whale's trades grew, whispers spread through the market. Competitors noticed the waves. Someone in London is pushing too far. Hedge funds began circling like sharks. They studied the trades, positioning themselves, waiting for the moment when arrogance would turn into weakness. Inside JPMorgan, arrogance was winning. The pressure to grow profits silenced doubts. Traders leaned on the models, trusting numbers that were quietly lying to them. Executives pressed for bigger moves, blind to the cracks spreading beneath their feet. And then came the first tremors. Small losses, dismissed as noise. Volatility creeping in, explained away with clever words. But those tremors were signals, and the system ignored them. Because belief in the model was stronger than fear of the truth. You watching this need to understand something. This is how systems collapse. Not with alarms, but with silence. The danger hides behind perfect data until it's too late. And if you're still here, you're not like most people. You see patterns others miss. You read between the numbers. So hit the like button now. It tells me you're one of the few who see the cracks before they spread. Because the cracks are coming. And next, you'll see what happens when a single spreadsheet error silences every warning and turns quiet confidence into a billion-dollar catastrophe. The file was tiny, a few kilobytes, an Excel sheet no different from the millions opened in offices every day. Rows, columns, formulas buried deep where no one bothers to look. It looked harmless, but inside, a single cell carried the weight of billions. This was JPMorgan's Value at Risk model, VAR, the pride of the bank, its crown jewel of risk control. It was designed to answer one question: how much can we lose before everything falls apart? Executives swore by it. Regulators trusted it. Traders built their confidence on it. And in early 2012, VAR whispered the same soothing answer every time: you're safe. Except it wasn't true. Somewhere in that file, a simple copy-paste mistake had corrupted the formula. A line of code meant to measure danger was instead hiding it. Risk that should have flashed red was quietly painted green. The model wasn't protecting JPMorgan, it was blinding it. Think about this. A bank bigger than many nations, relying on a spreadsheet held together by fragile formulas. No alarms, no cross-checks, just blind faith in a tool that had become gospel. On the trading floor, reports kept glowing green. Losses looked small, under control. Risk numbers stayed low even as the whales trades ballooned to unimaginable sizes. Every clean report fueled the next gamble. Success bred arrogance. Arrogance buried doubt. Outside, others were watching. Hedge funds tracked the trades, sensing something unnatural. The positions were so massive, they distorted credit markets. Whispers spread through Wall Street. Someone in London is overexposed. Predators smelled blood. They circled, waiting for the kill. Inside JPMorgan, no one dared challenge the model. Why question success? Why tear apart the system that had made them billions? Even when early tremors appeared, small, unexplained losses, they were dismissed as noise. The spreadsheet still said everything was fine. And in banking, when the model says green, you keep pressing forward. But the error was growing with every trade. Every new position added more weight to a structure already cracking. Every report reinforced a dangerous illusion. The whale's trades were a house of cards built on a formula that lied. When the losses finally surged, they didn't rise slowly. They erupted. Billions evaporated in weeks. The VAR model, once the bank's shield, was exposed as a fraud, not because someone hacked it, but because no one bothered to check it. The safe zone had never existed. It was an illusion, and now it was burning. This wasn't a small mistake. It was a glimpse into how power works. It trusts the tools that tell it what it wants to hear and punishes anyone who dares to question the numbers. That's why no one asked to see the formulas, because deep down, they didn't want to know. You're still here? Good. That means you're not like the rest. You see through the perfect charts. You're the one who asks the questions others avoid. Subscribe to Bull Secrets now, because this is only one file among many, and each one hides a truth the system prays will never surface. The calm is gone. The cracks are spreading fast, and when they finally break, the market will bleed. The first cracks appeared quietly. Positions that were supposed to hedge risk began to bleed. At first, just a few million. Losses so small they were brushed aside in morning briefings. They fit neatly into comforting explanations. Market noise, temporary volatility, nothing to worry about. The reports still glowed green. The formulas still whispered safety. But beneath the surface, something was accelerating, a force no one could stop. The London whale's trades had swollen to a scale few could comprehend. They were no longer protective hedges. They were bets so large they bent the market itself. Credit default swaps, instruments so complex that even seasoned traders hesitated to explain them, were now distorted under JPMorgan's weight. When the whale moved, the market felt it, and in the shadows, others were watching. Hedge funds smelled weakness. A giant was overextended, and giants fall hard. They tracked every ripple, every unusual price movement, piecing together JPMorgan's hidden exposure. Then they started placing their own trades, not to follow the whale, but to attack him. These were predators circling, positioning to strike the moment blood appeared in the water. Inside JPMorgan, the mood shifted. The confident silence of early 2012 gave way to tension that no one wanted to name. Emails later leaked showed unease creeping through the ranks. Why are the losses increasing? Why is the market moving against us? But responses were buried in technical jargon, designed to soothe, not to solve. The VAR model still said everything was fine. And when the numbers say green, no one dares call them wrong. The losses deepened. Every passing day widened the hole. Attempts to cut positions only worsened the damage, sending prices swinging violently. The trades had become anchors, dragging the bank down with them. They were too big to exit, too exposed to stay. Every move the bank made played into the hands of the funds betting against it. Whispers on Wall Street grew louder. It was no longer a rumor. JPMorgan was trapped. Rivals sensed panic. Some deliberately pushed prices to levels they knew would hurt the whale's positions, feeding on the bank's desperation. The predator-prey dynamic had flipped. The whale was now the hunted. By April 2012, the disaster could no longer be hidden behind spreadsheets and calm statements. Losses surged past billions. What had been a carefully managed strategy collapsed into chaos. The once reliable risk model was a cruel joke. The spreadsheet that promised safety had become a weapon against them. Confidence shattered. The market smelled blood, and it wanted more. But the real fight wasn't only in the market. As the trading desk drowned, another battle erupted behind closed doors. Executives argued in hushed meetings. Internal reports were rewritten, redacted, sanitized. The question wasn't just, how did this happen? It was, who will take the fall? Names were whispered. Blame shifted like a shadow. The fear wasn't just about money anymore. It was about survival. JPMorgan was bleeding billions. The market storm was in full force. But the real explosion was still loading, hidden in boardrooms and secret memos. There, reputations were hanging by a thread. There, silence was bought, narratives were rewritten, and careers were quietly erased. The market had already struck. Now the bank would start eating itself from the inside. When the market storm finally calmed, the wreckage was undeniable. Over $6 billion gone. Not a trading loss, not just a bad bet, humiliation on a global stage. JPMorgan, the bank that sold itself as the master of risk, had been undone by its own arrogance and a spreadsheet no one bothered to check. And losses of this scale don't fade with a press release. They leave scars. Behind closed doors, a different battle erupted. Not on the trading floor, but in rooms where the air felt heavy, where even the walls seemed to absorb secrets. Executives gathered under dim lights, speaking in coded language, choosing every word as if it could decide who lived or died in the aftermath. The mission was no longer to stop the losses, it was to contain the fallout. The narrative had to be rewritten, the truth diluted. Someone would have to take the fall. Internal investigations tore through thousands of emails, re-examined call logs, and reconstructed timelines. But this wasn't a hunt for facts. It was a hunt for a scapegoat. Traders were questioned, not by regulators, but by their own risk committees. An interrogation not to reveal the truth, but to craft a story that could survive the headlines. Bruno Ixil, once the quiet star of the Chief Investment Office, was the first to be isolated. The man who had been praised for years suddenly became reckless, the perfect face to plaster over the disaster. The deeper failures, the corrupted models, the blind faith in a spreadsheet that hid billions in risk were quietly swept aside. The system had failed, but the system would never put itself on trial. Outside, the pressure mounted. Regulators circled like vultures. Congress demanded explanations. Journalists pieced together leaks, exposing fragments of the truth. And inside JPMorgan, whispers spread. How much could they really afford to reveal? Because buried in the data was something worse than an error. It wasn't just that the risk had been miscalculated, it was that at some point people knew and chose to look away. Resignations came like falling dominoes. Careers that had taken decades to build were erased in weeks. Ina Drew, the CIO who oversaw the trades, stepped down. Fines followed, settlements were paid, billions exchanged hands in silence. On paper, the crisis ended there. But the real damage wasn't financial, it was structural. Inside JPMorgan, the illusion of control cracked. The models, the numbers, the so-called tools of precision, none of them could be trusted the same way again. Outside, markets learned something dangerous. Even the biggest players bleed. Hedge funds, regulators, competitors, they all saw how one small flaw could ripple through billions and bring a titan to its knees. The $6 billion loss wasn't the story. The cover-up was. The whispers in locked rooms, the silences in official reports, the truths buried because they were too costly to admit. This wasn't just an accident. It was a reminder of how fragile the system really is. A structure held together by faith in data no one dares to question. JPMorgan survived. The markets moved on. The headlines faded. But something fundamental had changed. The myth of invincibility was shattered. And if a single flawed spreadsheet could do this to Wall Street's biggest bank, what about the errors still hiding in servers today? How many quiet formulas are out there waiting to snap, waiting to bring down the next giant while everyone believes they're safe? Somewhere, in another file, another cell is waiting, silent, invisible, and no one is watching. We like to believe the system is precise, that numbers don't lie, that formulas protect us. But this story proved otherwise. A single spreadsheet error burned billions. It shook one of the biggest banks on Wall Street and revealed how fragile the machinery of power really is. Because the problem wasn't the mistake, it was the silence that let it grow. JPMorgan survived. The market moved on. But the illusion of control, that's gone forever. So next time you hear a perfect number, a flawless report, a model that can't fail, ask yourself, who benefits if no one checks the math? If you're the kind of person who asks those questions, hit the like button and subscribe, because this was just one secret, and there are many more waiting to be uncovered.